The next speaker is Professor Davidson, who's an engineer from Sierra Leone, involved in IPCC, and he's going to give a PowerPoint presentation, I think. But again, only 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, IIASA, for giving me this opportunity to share some of my views with you. The aim of the talk follows from the talk, especially from the first two presenters, in which we have to spend some time to look at poverty. And I think there are some converging views that I imagine from poverty, which I'll talk on. The first part is what people or some authors choose to call energy poverty. Energy poverty is affecting a significant number of people in my part of the world, and we choose to call them the rural people. They do not have adequate energy to meet their basic services. They depend on traditional fuels, and they have no reliable security, energy security. And because of that, they live on a perfect state of survival that affects their productivity, their health, and education. So they are socially poor and economically poor. And if we go to talk about energy system, we have to break that vicious cycle in which low productivity, no cash to purchase modern energy, and it filters back to the energy poor and no access. Now, what I want to talk about is how do you come into this intermediation? How can you intervene into the whole society to break down this poverty? And this view graph clearly shows that if we come with financial intermediation, which I think was discussed by the first speaker, and we also talk about institutional intermediation and technical intermediation and social intermediation. These are bulk of activities. It's a package, and it's not a matter of choosing one and leave the other. And I will try to concentrate on technical intermediation. Now, let me just talk a bit on financial. I think if we want to transfer, I think this morning the colleague who spent time to talk about transformations, if we want to transfer a society to rural areas, let us try to reduce the transaction cost or the middleman thinking, which really dominates the thinking of our lifestyle in the urban area. We have to reduce the transaction cost. Then for rural areas, subsidy is not a bad word. I know for urban areas, the moment you mention subsidy or grant, it looks like a bad word. It's not a bad word for rural areas. Then also creation of a guarantee system and setup of new collateral systems and the introduction of investment schemes. These are the different types of financial intermediation that you can come with in rural areas. Now, technical intermediation is where we are doing very badly. Now, the school system that exists in most African countries, we have what is known as the junior secondary school. After junior secondary school, these people in rural areas have nothing else to do. They go to the market. And these people form a rich reservoir for most of the rebel movements that we know now in African countries, because they are a good source to be employed. In my country, when we did the investigation, we found out that most of the rebels are people who are graduates of these junior secondary schools in rural areas. And one thing that we should think about is set up some after-school skill schools, which these people are taught skills Because the skills or services that people need in rural areas are very simple, like repairing some basic agricultural equipment with welding. They've been taught welding. They've been taught basic carpentry, basic different technical skills. And the difference that we have to do with these schools, as we will see later, is that they have to be owned and managed to a great extent by the village people themselves. And they also have to be involved in technology selection. We talk about a lot of technologies around, but how much involved are they in selecting the technologies that we give them? And when these technologies are acquired, either for construction, installation, operation, and even maintenance. I remember I was involved in a project in South Africa in which people have to travel for miles to go and do some small repair work in village works. And then technology adaptation. And the contractors, when we outsource duty, do we outsource this to the main towns or do we use people within the same rural areas? These are all activities that would lead to wealth creation. Because the only way you get out of poverty is by giving people money. But if you pay them for services carried out, you'll achieve quite a lot. Now, in terms of institutional mediation, one-stop energy shop. This is being tried out in South Africa, and it's working very well, especially if you want to introduce LPG gas stoves into the rural areas. They go to one shop, and in that shop they can buy everything, and that moves in types of institution. Energy Coordination Office, that's another one. Now, we should not think that because we are dealing with rural areas, they should not have regulatory system and incentive schemes. Now, the reason why I put strengthening administration is that the administration that we have in most of these rural areas are very weakened. They can be strengthened significantly by making the power mine chiefs and its elders to become an important element in things. Now, this was why I stressed the social intermediation, ownership and profit sharing, and risk sharing. Now, two areas that we should not forget are subsidies and energy pricing. Now, the future for energy poverty will need to be a package of different elements, technical, institutional policies, and that's the last slide. In putting all these things together, we must adhere to what the speaker before me talked about, which is the role of government. Government has to create a policy that creates the enabling conditions. Governments have to create schemes to incentivize the private sector and improved coordination schemes for funds and grants. I thank you.